They came from the stars, not with diplomacy or curiosity, but with a broadcast that echoed in every language on Earth. You will kneel or you will be eradicated. The Galactic Empire's fleet hung in low orbit, casting shadows over the continents like metal god. On their flagship, Admiral Zeltor stood before a gilded projection of Earth, his arms folded behind his back, smugness radiating from his golden-trimmed armor. To him, it was a backwater planet, green, blue, and hopelessly primitive. We've subjugated species with neural weaponry. They've got tanks that burn gasoline, he scoffed. His officers laughed, long and loud. One of them even passed around an intercepted human broadcast featuring a military parade. The sight of a rumbling M1 Abrams drew particular ridicule. They still use combustion engines, barked Lieutenant Voris, his voice thick with disbelief. A few seats down, a junior analyst cleared his throat. Sir, the humans have fought more wars among themselves than any species in our archives. They're savages, Zeltor interrupted. Uncoordinated, emotional, fractured. We'll land a single platoon, fire a few plasma rounds, and they'll surrender before lunch. Far below, on Earth's surface, no one was laughing. In a war room buried beneath NORAD, the air was heavy with tension and sweat. General Amelia Park stood at the head of the table, tapping her pen against a satellite image of the Nevada desert. Her voice was even, but her eyes burned with urgency. They're deploying ground troops within the hour, 20 miles from Groom Lake. We've lost contact with local air defense systems. A British colonel spoke up. Conventional firepower won't hold. Another officer added, their infantry is equipped with adaptive shielding. Kinetics will bounce off. And yet, Park said slowly, they've never fought anyone like us. They think we're stupid. That might be our advantage. Silence. Then a voice from the back, young, calm, laced with quiet defiance. Let me take a tank crew. Heads turned. Captain Jax Monroe stepped forward, his posture rigid, uniform rumpled. Only 30, but he'd seen 3 combat tours, each one marked by impossible odds and stubborn survival. His jaw was bruised, his knuckles scarred, and his eyes carried the weight of someone who didn't flinch anymore. A tank, scoffed the French delegate. You want to take a steel box to a plasma fight? Jax didn't blink. No. I want to take a legend. He slid a photo across the table. The M1A2 SCP-V3 Abrams. 50 tons of iron and fire, sharpened over decades of combat, still in active service because nothing had proven better. She was old. She was loud. And she was his. Park studied him. You're serious? They won't expect it. They'll underestimate it. That's when we hit. Outside, in the sun-scorched Nevada desert, dust curled like ghosts. The Empire's dropships landed in perfect formation, cutting craters into the ground with quiet contempt. Tall, gleaming figures marched out in exosuits that hissed and shimmered. One of them looked around and sneered. This is their resistance? Sand and heat. The humans didn't fire first. They waited. Hidden in scrub brush, camouflaged beneath netting and dust, Monroe's tank crew whispered final prayers and loaded sabot rounds. The roar of engines was muffled beneath layers of ceramic plating. Monroe sat in the commander's hatch, peering through magnified optics. His gunner, Corporal Rena Alvarez, adjusted her headset and checked the firing cue. They're laughing at us again, she muttered. Good, Monroe said. Let him. Below the hill, the alien troops strutted forward, arrogant and gleaming. Their scanners hadn't detected anything with a proper heat signature. That suited Monroe just fine. He keyed the radio. On my mark. Across the ridge, for more Abrams tanks waited, silent giants holding their breath. 3, 2, 1. The first round exploded from the cannon with a thunderous crack, a flash of fire and steel slicing the air. It hit the lead alien walker just above the knee joint, an engineered weak point. The mech collapsed, folding inward like a broken toy. A second shot followed. Then a third. Within seconds, the desert bloomed with war. Monroe's tank lurched forward. Dust trailed behind them as they barreled down the slope. Plasma bolts hissed and arced overhead, scorching the sand but missing their marks. Alvarez called out targets, her voice crisp. Next Walker, left side, charging, engaging now. Boom. Another mech turned to slag. On the ridge, one of the tanks took a glancing hit to its side skirt but held strong. Imperial soldiers scattered, their discipline cracking as the unexpected ferocity of the human tanks tore into their formation. Their plasma rifles sizzled harmlessly against reactive armor. The M1s didn't just survive, they dominated. Inside his tank, Monroe's face was a mask of calm. Told you they'd underestimate us. Then came the counterattack. 3 alien hovercraft swooped in, loosing salvos of energy rounds that sent shockwaves through the sand. One struck just feet from Monroe's vehicle, throwing up debris and a flash of heat. The tank shook, but didn't stop. Monroe barked, "Rena!" Already on it. The turret whirled. With a shriek of hydraulics, she fired. The first round missed. The second tore into the engine housing of the lead hovercraft. It exploded midair, scattering debris in a fiery arc across the battlefield. Imperial comms erupted in chaos. Their commanders screamed for retreat. Their secure net, previously calm, now crackled with disbelief. "Our shields are failing. How is this possible? They're using kinetic munitions. Primitive, yes, but it's working." They had come to Earth expecting capitulation. What they found was steel, fire, and a very human refusal to bow. By the time the sun dipped low, the Empire's first ground assault had been shattered. Wreckage littered the desert floor, metal twisted and smoking. A single M1 Abrams rolled forward, its cannon still warm, its treads crushing what was left of a downed exosuit. Monroe stood on the hull, helmet off, sweat streaming down his face. He looked up at the sky, where the Imperial fleet still loomed. And he smiled, just a little. They're gonna need a hell of a lot more than that. The Empire had not anticipated resistance. The wreckage of their first landing force was meant to be a minor setback, a blip in an otherwise smooth conquest. But instead of surrender, Earth retaliated with silence. Ominous, calculating silence, and now the Imperial Command had authorized a full-scale deployment. Their warships dropped troop pods across the western United States, deploying legions of augmented infantry, hover tanks, and skimmer drones programmed for swift eradication. From the edge of the ruined desert outpost, Captain Monroe watched the new wave descend through binoculars. His face was streaked with oil and sweat, his knuckles raw from repairs and field loading. Around him, his crew worked methodically, no cheers, no bravado. Just quiet urgency. They knew what was coming. Rena Alvarez crouched beside the Abrams, elbow deep in the side hatch, muttering to herself. She'd already replaced the targeting array twice since dawn. Their backup was a box of duct tape and grit. "I patched the fire control," she said. "It'll hold, maybe." "Probably. That's the spirit," Monroe replied, not smiling. Behind them, the remaining tanks of Task Force Hammer stood ready, 5 armored beasts camouflaged under netting and desert soot. Each bore fresh scars from the last engagement, pitted armor, scorched turrets, but they still rumbled with defiance. "Movement," came a voice over comms. "North Quadrant. 30+ contacts." Monroe didn't respond immediately. He scanned the valley below, brushland and rock, barely concealing the shimmer of approaching exosuit. Hovercraft swept low over the terrain, kicking up dust, flanked by spindly alien walkers with pulsing plasma rifles. "All right," he said finally. "Let's show them what extinction feels like in analog." Within seconds, engines roared to life. The M1s surged forward, spreading into formation, treads grinding stone into powder. The radio crackled again. Voice of Lieutenant Reyes from the second tank. "We're already painting targets. First mech is range marked. Say the word. Light 'em up." The valley erupted. Tank rounds slammed into alien armor with bone-jarring force. The lead walker staggered, took a shell to its midsection, and crumpled like wet steel. A second tried to pivot, but a sabot round cracked through its shielding and shredded its cockpit in a concussive burst. Monroe's tank advanced, turrets sweeping smoothly, precise and deadly. Above them, the Empire's skimmer drones dove into formation, peppering the human convoy with precision bolts of energy. One Abrams caught a glancing hit, and its left tread exploded, the tank spinning into a ditch, but it didn't explode. The crew scrambled out under cover fire, alive. Inside Monroe's tank, the air was thick with heat and smoke. "Walker, 10 o'clock. Rena called out, eyes fixed on her screen. Monroe peered through the viewfinder. It was a four-legged brute, bigger than the rest, shielded and armed with a plasma mortar. It began charging its weapon. A direct hit would vaporize them. "Take the shot. I need 2 more seconds." "We don't have 2 seconds. The alien mech's turret began to glow, and Monroe felt time tighten. But then, boom. Alvarez fired. The round hit just beneath the mech's main joint. The explosion rocked the battlefield, sent up a pillar of flame, and the Walker collapsed inward, fire trailing from every vent. Monroe exhaled, then keyed the general channel. "Status." Reyes responded. 2 Walkers down, 1 tank immobilized. "They're regrouping east side of the ridge. Looks like they're setting up a forward artillery line." "Copy. Let's flank." "Sir," Alvarez said, glancing up from her display. "We're almost dry. 4 shells left. After that, we're running on fumes. We won't need more than 4. They crested the next hill, the landscape burning behind them, and came face to face with the Empire's field battery, a cluster of anti-grav cannons and drone deployment racks guarded by a ring of exosuited infantry. The Imperials saw them too late. Monroe's tank fired first. The round tore through the central gun, igniting its energy core and leveling half the installation in a single strike. A second tank from the flank followed up with a volley that shredded the infantry line. Panic spread across the alien comms once again. On board an Imperial dreadnought in orbit, Admiral Zeltor stared at the feed with growing disbelief. The battlefield should have been a slaughter. Their superiority wasn't just technological, it was supposed to be absolute. And yet these human machines, cobbled together with metal and fire, kept carving through his elite ground forces like they were made of paper. "What are we missing?" he demanded. The war analyst next to him trembled. "They fight like they have nothing left to lose. They exploit terrain, they bait ambushes, they fire through our shielding. They're not just surviving. They're adapting." Zeltor sneered. "Then we erase them from orbit." But his command was cut off by an urgent ping. Earth's remaining fighter squadrons had engaged. American F-22s and European Typhoons swarmed the orbital layer, using speed and chaos to delay the bombardment. Even without energy weapons, they harried the drop ships with missiles and pure velocity, overwhelming the Empire's automated drone defense. Back in Nevada, Monroe's tank rolled over the ruins of the artillery line, smoke curling from its muzzle. His crew was bruised, exhausted, but alive. Around him, the other Abrams regrouped, limping but intact. They had no reinforcements, no escape, and yet, for now, the field was theirs. Monroe climbed out of the turret, feeling the grit in every crease of his uniform. He scanned the horizon. Alien wreckage dotted the valley. Fires burned under a crimson sky. Silence had returned, but not peace. He reached for his radio. "General Park, this is Hammer Lead. Enemy ground advance neutralized. We're holding position." A long pause. Then Park's voice came through, soft with disbelief. "You held them." "We did more than hold them," Monroe said. "We bled them." And as he stared toward the distant stars, he knew this was only the beginning. The Empire would come back. But now they would come back afraid. The desert night was colder than it had any right to be. The stars above no longer twinkled. Too many of them were ships now, Imperial vessels shifting silently in orbit, eclipsing constellations that had guided humans for centuries. Below, Monroe sat on the hull of his tank, the Abrams engine still humming faintly, its warmth a small defiance against the chill and the dark. His crew was silent, worn down to the bone. Rena sat nearby, cradling a ration bar and chewing absently, staring at the sky like she wanted to spit at it. Reyes had fallen asleep against a tread, helmet still on, rifle across his lap. Even machines had limit. And so did they. Monroe didn't sleep. He couldn't. He just waited. It came just after 0400 hours. No warning, no preamble. A blinding beam of light carved through the sky and scorched a nearby ridge into glass. An orbital shot, high yield and precise. Not aimed at them. Not yet. Just a reminder. The Empire had grown tired of losing. Then came the transmission. Admiral Zeltor's voice filled every channel, every frequency, translated perfectly for human ears. It was smooth, elegant, and saturated with disgust. "You persist," he said. "You crawl in the dirt and spill your blood to protect rocks and ruins. But this ends now. We will not waste further resources on conquest. We will burn what you cling to." Park's response was immediate. "You'll try." But Monroe could hear it, the edge in her voice. They couldn't survive another orbital strike. Not without shields. Not with tanks and grit alone. That morning, a plan formed not in a boardroom, but in the cramped belly of Monroe's tank. "You want us to do what?" Rena asked, blinking. "Drive straight into the alien staging area. We break their uplink relay. It's how they guide their orbital strikes. Laser targeting arrays, synchronized through those walkers they keep dropping in clusters." "That's suicide." "It's a distraction," Monroe corrected. "If we hit the relay hard and fast, they'll pause. We buy time. Just a few minutes. Long enough for our people to jam the rest of the system or mask the remaining positions. Without targeting uplink, their precision's gone." Reyes finally spoke. "If we miss, or if they see us coming." "I know." He didn't say what everyone was thinking. They probably wouldn't come back. But some chances weren't about survival. They were about consequence. The Abrams convoy rolled out before dawn, 6 tanks, patched and weary, cloaked in the last of their infrared dampeners. Satellite eyes would catch them eventually, but maybe not fast enough. The target was 30 clicks out, an old mining town converted into an Imperial base. Monroe's tank led the formation, kicking up dust, its engine roaring louder with every mile. As they crested a ridge, they saw it, gleaming towers, shimmering blue comm arrays, guarded by a cordon of mechs and skimmers. They didn't slow down. The first shot came from Alvarez, who vaporized a drone tower with a tungsten round. Then the rest joined in, the tanks erupting like a storm of steel and fire. Alien troops scrambled to respond, but they were too slow. The Abrams weren't subtle. They were thunder made flesh. Monroe's cannon blasted through the left flank of the relay site, scattering alien engineers like insects. A plasma bolt scorched the tank's rear, nearly breaching the armor. Sparks flew. Systems failed. The treads locked. They didn't stop. Inside the cabin, smoke filled the air. The targeting reticle glitched. Alvarez kept yelling out bearings manually, calling shots by instinct and grit. Reyes fed shells, blood running down his wrist. Relays still transmitting. Rena shouted. Not for long. Monroe aimed at the primary dish, tall, humming with blue light and exposed. He lined up the shot. A second too slow. A hovercraft screamed overhead and fired. The impact sent the tank lurching sideways, slamming into a pile of shattered concrete. Everything went black. Then light. Sound. Systems rebooted. Monroe coughed, checked Rena. Conscious. Reyes was groaning, but moving. He didn't ask how they were still alive. The Abrams had taken worse. Fire, he rasped. The cannon boomed one final time. The dish erupted into a shower of metal and flame. Transmission ceased. High above the Earth, the orbital strike paused. No signal. No lock. Zeltor stared at the error code. His technician swallowed hard. Targeting lost, Admiral. All relay nodes have gone silent. And for the first time, the Admiral said nothing. On the ground, the silence that followed was thick, hollow. The other Abrams tanks were limping away, 3 out of 6 still moving. Monroe's was dead in the dust. "Get out," he said to Rena. "No way," she growled, wiping blood from her lip. "We're not leaving you here." "I'm fine," he lied. "But if they circle back, someone has to tell them it worked." Reyes looked at him, jaw tight. "You're a stubborn bastard." "Just following protocol," Monroe muttered. They climbed out slowly, dragging each other toward the remaining tank. Monroe stayed behind, rifle in hand, scanning the horizon. The uplink was gone. For now, Earth breathed again. Hours later, back at the mobile base, General Park received the report. Partial success. High casualties. Relay destroyed. Monroe MIA. She didn't cry. She didn't flinch. But she stood a long time at the edge of the command tent, staring at the sky. They had survived. The Empire had been bloodied. And now they would think twice every time they descended. Because somewhere out there, on a battlefield carved from stone and memory, a dead tank and a stubborn human had reminded the stars what defiance looked like. The sun had risen hours ago, but the light didn't feel like victory. It washed over a battlefield scarred with smoldering wreckage and half-buried bodies, a graveyard of metal and silence. In the heart of it all, beneath the blackened shell of an Abrams tank, something moved. Monroe's fingers twitched first, then his eyes blinked open, squinting against the light. Every muscle in his body screamed. He could taste smoke in his mouth and copper in his throat. The last thing he remembered was the shot, the one that took down the uplink, the one that was supposed to end it. He tried to sit up. Pain roared through his side. Broken ribs, maybe more. But he was alive. Against every odd, he was still breathing. "Status report," he muttered, then laughed hoarsely. There was no one to hear him. No comms, no crew. Just him and the half-crushed carcass of his tank. He dragged himself out through the emergency hatch. Outside, the wind carried the stench of scorched earth and oil. The relay tower was a twisted skeleton now, its pieces scattered across the valley like discarded bones. Nearby, 2 alien hovercrafts lay overturned, their pilots long gone or dead. He stumbled toward the nearest rise, limping with every step, scanning for movement. If the Empire was still here, they weren't showing it. No more gunships, no patrols, just retreating shadows. For the first time in days, the air felt still. He reached the ridge and saw the convoy in the distance, what was left of it. A cluster of Abrams tanks, parked in formation like loyal sentinels, their crews gathered around a campfire. Rena's dark hair was unmistakable, tied back, her face lit by flame. Reyes was beside her, arm in a sling, laughing at something someone said. Monroe felt something shift inside him. Not quite relief, something heavier. Something earned. He didn't wave, didn't call out. He just started walking, one slow, stubborn step at a time. They saw him after a minute. At first, no one moved. They just stared, disbelief flickering into recognition. Then Rena broke into a run, faster than seemed possible after everything, stumbling once but not stopping. Reyes followed, limping hard but grinning. "You unbelievable son of a bitch," Rena said as she reached him, throwing her arms around his neck before stepping back and slugging his shoulder. "You were supposed to stay dead this time." "Didn't take," he said, wincing. "You look like hell," Reyes added as he caught up. "I feel worse." They helped him the rest of the way. The crew gathered, offering claps on the back, nods, quiet words of respect. No one needed to say what it meant. Monroe returning wasn't just a miracle. It was proof that the fight hadn't broken them, that some ghosts still walked out of fire. Later that night, a message came down from General Park. Brief, encoded, and direct. Orbital bombardments suspended. Enemy fleet repositioning. Ceasefire window active. Diplomatic envoy inbound. You bought us time. Hold position. Reinforcements en route. It wasn't victory, but it was space to breathe. They set up defenses again, light turrets, signal jammers, drone scouts on wide patrol. Monroe refused a medevac. He stayed with his crew, sleeping in the hull of another tank, eating from the same rations, listening to the same night wind. On the third day of silence, a dropship descended. Not Imperial, not human military either. It was white, unmarked, civilian. 2 figures stepped out, one in formal UN garb, the other wearing the soft, flowing robes of an Imperial liaison. The Empire had finally come to talk. Not conquer, not threaten. To talk. Monroe watched from a distance, arms folded across his chest. Rena stood beside him. "You think it's real?" she asked. "The truce?" He shrugged. "It's not peace. Not yet. But they're bleeding. We showed them that. They'll think twice before they land again." She was quiet for a moment. "We did it, didn't we? Not some secret weapon. Not a miracle. Just tanks. And rage." Monroe looked down at the sand, then up at the sky, at the stars that once meant mystery and wonder and now meant fire and invasion. "No," he said softly. "Not just rage. Belief. The Empire had mocked their weapons, dismissed their tanks as relics, their soldiers as primitives. But it wasn't the technology that held the line. It was the people behind it, the ones who refused to kneel. And now the galaxy knew it, that humanity would not be crushed, that even in the face of overwhelming power, there would always be one more round chambered, one more soldier standing, one more tank rolling through the smoke. The war wasn't over, but Earth had earned its place in the stars. Not as subjects, as survivors.